And now joining me is Dakhil from Bleacher Report. Mo, what's up, man?
Not a whole lot, Kevin. How are you doing?
I'll tell you what, man. They are going pedal to the metal here, accelerating, literally and figuratively, getting De'Aaron Fox in this deal, because my first thought here is we're going from slow motion Chris Paul pick and rolls with Victor Wembanyama to this speedy, downhill, gets in the paint, at will point guard and De'Aaron Fox. I think we're about to see a new dimensions of Victor that we've ever seen, ever, in his basketball career, even going back overseas. What do you think about this fit for Victor with De'Aaron Fox?
I love it. I mean, just on the pure aspect of the fact that this team will play faster, I think is something that matters a whole lot. Look, historically, Chris Paul teams do not play faster. I know this from personal experience. They tend to play slow. I think this works more in Wembanyama's favor along the lines of let's play faster. I think this is also going to help Castle. Like this is a kind of a team that's screaming to run a little bit fast, but they got, it's like you have a Ferrari, but it's an old person driving it. Sorry, Chris. And they're just very careful and cautious with it. No, this is one you just want to, like you said, pedal to the metal. Let's go. I think it's a great pickup for them. I thought it was a smart move. The moment it was kind of announced De'Aaron Fox wants to go to San Antonio, I mean, there's not a lot of times you hear that sentence. I lived in San Antonio. I don't want to move back. Like it's not something that you want to have.
Well, Fox's wife is from San Antonio,
which
Fox
makes a big difference. Yeah, it makes a big difference. I am a Cali boy, so yes, my Texas time was a little bit different.
I'm sure you much prefer Cali tacos over Texas tacos as well, right?
Listen, you say tacos, I'm in. Doesn't matter what style, they're all good. Shout out to Tacos Cabana.
Well, that's not true. I'm from the Northeast. Tacos out here was never a Mexican.
I don't
food
go
guy.
to the Northeast and think I'm getting tacos. That's the only thing.
You go for Italian.
Italian. I'm going for
seafood.
Some seafood. Give me a lobster roll, Kevin, where you're at. But but you're good. You can get good tacos.
Some clam chowder.
Both. Give me some of that chowder. But I just think along the lines. For the Spurs, I think this signals also, okay, we're going into the next phase, right? Like we questions this year of like, okay, what are they going to be? Is this going to be another year where, and I wouldn't have been mad if they're like, hey, we're just going to kind of stay the course here. But this is an opportunity they saw that they could say, hey, we could accelerate the timeline just a little bit. It's not like they went and were like, okay, they have to win a championship now in the next couple of years. This is a great building block. This is a good duo. This is going to be a good number 2 for Wemby. I think this is going to be a good piece for them, a guy that can get him the ball, get the guys going. I love the fit with Castle as well. Obviously, these guys both need to shoot a little bit better from 3, and I think they'll get there, especially Castle, in the long run. I loved it for them. And then the best part, Kevin, is they didn't give up that much.
Dude, I am floored about the Spurs giving up as little as they did in this deal. Like, I know on the surface, 4 first-round picks, 3 second-round picks, that sounds like a lot, but they gave up the 2031 Minnesota first-round pick they gave up is really the only high-value asset they gave up in the deal. That's it. Everything else, they gave up their own 2027 first. That's going to be a bad pick. They gave up a top 14 protected Charlotte first this year. That's going to turn into 2 second-round picks. So it's really 3 first-round draft picks, because they're also giving back the Chicago Bulls their pick this year. But it's really 3 first-round picks in 5 seconds. That's really what this deal is with Sidy Cissoko, Trey Jones, and Zach Collins. Like, I can't believe that they managed to pull this off without giving up one of the Hawks picks. Everybody in Sacramento wanted Stephon Castle from the Spurs. I'm not surprised that they didn't give up Castle, who very well might win Rookie of the Year this year and is a perfect fit next to Fox and Wemby as like an Iguodala type of player who can fill so many different roles. But I think, if you're talking about assets for assets, the Spurs are the biggest winner of the entire weekend with the haul they gave up for Fox, considering everything else they still have left over, even more than the Lakers, because they still gave up a top 10 player for Luka and Anthony Davis. They still gave up what could be a good first-round draft pick in the future. The Spurs are going to be good forever. It's just the reality of it, man. Like, I don't know how they managed to pull this off, but it speaks, I suppose, to the leverage that they had with Fox only wanting to go to San Antonio above anybody, the other team.
I mean, it's interesting because I'm very curious Sacramento's side of it of being so willing to placate it that we're going to do this. I also don't think this is a bad haul for the
No.
Kings and what they get.
I like
think
LaVine.
But it's not just even the picks in terms of the picks. Okay, the Charlotte pick turns into 2 seconds. That's 2 good second round picks. Like, that's going to be probably in the 30s when it becomes the case. We've seen a lot of talent come in. If you scout well, you can find talent in the second round in the 30s and 40s in that regards. Like, that's not like massive, but I'm with you. I would have just assumed one of the Hawks picks was going. And the fact that they didn't give that up to either Sacramento or Chicago is amazing. Like, I love Chicago. They jump in the deal. Hey, we just want the protections. We just want our pick back without any protections, which probably would have fallen. Like, they probably would have kept the pick anyways, but they just want to be sure, in that regards. But if I was Chicago, I would have been trying to get a little bit more in terms of assets. And they even sent back Sacramento's second round pick back to Sacramento. And I think there's just a lot of interesting stuff with that. But I love, again, the setup the Spurs are in, because now, look, whether it's using those picks or flipping those picks into another player down the road, is kind of perfect. Like, they're just kind of, hey, I don't think they're going to make any other move this year that's going to be big. Just see what we have now with Fox, see how it works, kind of evaluate, and then adjust in the offseason. And they have these picks that they can start to move.
Now, do you think with San Antonio, there's any reason to even accelerate more now with this current roster and try to go get another player ahead of Thursday's deadline? Like, for example, this might be a silly idea. This might be the worst idea, or it might be the most genius idea ever, and you're just going to be blown away, Mo. What if the Spurs called up the Suns and asked about Kevin Durant? Why not?
Yeah, I mean, I that's something you definitely call and see what the price is on that and things like that. That's if you value, hey, let's just go try to win a championship in the next 2-3 years, right? And
while
I'm fine
Victor's
with that.
on his rookie contract,
on his rookie contract, right? Let's go win one right now. And if that's the case, and that's the attitude, like, let's just be honest, man, because it'll probably cost them Castle in that run. It's going to be, I mean, well, I don't know. The way GMs, the way GMs are negotiating these days, I don't know. But I think it could be along the lines of, just assume it's, Wemby, Durant, and Fox. Like, that's dangerous come playoff time with everything that you have to deal with. And I think that's really a fascinating sort of view of it. I kick the tires on, if I'm San Antonio, every team should have called by now about Durant. Let's just be honest here. And I would be serious with it. Hey, because if you really think, hey, we have a chance to go win a championship right now with that lineup, I think that's something you have to really consider. I like it. I don't know how realistic that is. I also know the Spurs are a relatively conservative organization. Like, I don't know the last time they made a huge in-season move like they just did now. So I don't know if they're willing to do it twice. But if it's a chance where you could look and go, okay, we can go win a championship this year by doing that, I think it's something you got to look at.
Is there any other name that you think they should be looking at right now, Mo? Because obviously Katie's older. I understand that they're not going to trade 4 of their. For what it's worth, they have 8 more first-round draft picks. They have 4 swaps as well. So they still retain a lot of high-value picks. They can swap with Minnesota in the future. They can swap still with Sacramento. The Kings didn't get their own swap back in 2031. Right. They can swap with Boston. They can swap with Atlanta. They have 2 first-round picks from Atlanta in 2025 and 2027 as well, on top of all of their own future picks. So they have a lot of high-value picks, and still they didn't have to give up Devin Vassell. They didn't have to give up Castle. They didn't have to give up Sohan. They didn't have to give up even Keldon Johnson for that matter. They still have some young talent that has value. So the Spurs could do that if they wanted to. They could have the best KD offer if they wanted to do that. But is there anybody else that's, not quite as old as Kevin Durant that comes to mind?
Not quite as old, and I don't think will cost them as much as Kevin Durant. And this is a guy I'm fascinated with. I think could move the needle most out of anybody who's going to be traded at this deadline, Luka aside. Cameron Johnson in Brooklyn. Adding that wing, young wing defender, long, lanky, can shoot, can score, adding more scoring versatility, kind of taking a little pressure off of Wemby to a degree, I think that really kind of makes that team pretty interesting there. I think that's where you start to look around and go like, okay, like that's something that doesn't win a championship this year, but that really puts you in the top of the West, I think, over the next few years. And then a couple of tweaks, a couple of guys get better, and you're right in the mix for a championship.
Cam Johnson's a good idea, actually. You know, he makes $22 million this year. You have multiple salaries you could put together in a deal. Just thinking about this off the top of our heads here. If it is Cam Johnson, if you're the Spurs, you could give Harrison Barnes, who makes 18. You could give Keldon Johnson, who makes 19. You could give Chris Paul, who makes 10 plus another piece. There's so many different configurations that you could go get Cam Johnson. And if it's still the case, and I don't know this, I have not sourced this recently, I've not heard anything new, but it has been previously reported the Nets want 2 first-round picks for Cam Johnson. I'd imagine the Spurs might be willing to make that payment if it's not, you know, a Hawks pick. If it's one of their own firsts and maybe a rights to a swap, something like that feels like a fair middle ground for Cam Johnson, especially because this year, Mo, I don't know like how real it is. I think it is real. He's showing a lot of new dimensions to his game this year with Brooklyn that he never showed in the past. Off the dribble shooting, creation out of pick and roll, pull up threes. Cam Johnson is no longer that guy we saw in Phoenix, just taking catch and shoot threes after catch and shoot three, driving closeouts. He is a much more dynamic overall player now than he was back then when everybody had eyes on the Suns. To me, like he could do a lot of that stuff for the Spurs in an even more condensed role next to Fox, next to Wemby. I think Cam Johnson's really might be top of my board besides like the big swing of like a KD type.
Yeah, I just think, I love the way Cam plays. And I'm also kind of careful about it because, like, we saw with the whole Mikal Bridges, like Mikal Bridges blew up in Brooklyn. But I'll be honest, like, if you're going to be a team that's going to win, you need Mikal Bridges Phoenix type. You need him to be willing to play that role more than being the star in that instance. And I think you kind of come to that a little bit with Cam Johnson. But having that versatility and being able to play different ways. I mean, when Wemby goes to the bench, you could have him play off of Fox and work off of each other. You could have him play with Wemby, and run the pick and roll with Wemby. Like, there's a lot of that stuff you can get out of that. I think there's a lot of things that are interesting there. I think he'd be a really interesting piece there. I think, he's a Swiss Army knife. He can do so many things for you. And I think that's kind of the beauty of what you're looking at if you're the Spurs in terms of trying to move for Cam Johnson. I think that actually would almost be the call I'd make right now if I were the Spurs.
Now, this could be related to the Nets conversation because they have bigs. Day'Ron Sharpe, multiple teams are inquiring about him from Brooklyn. They have bigs that could move. Now, it didn't work Wemby's rookie year with Zach Collins starting at the 5 and Wemby at the 4. It failed. Their season took off. Victor's season took off when they moved Collins to the bench and Wemby went to the 5. But do you think as the Spurs evaluate building this roster out around Fox and Victor, there is some logic to them finding a 5 that can play alongside Wemby? Or are you all in the camp of Wemby's your 5 all the time as much as possible? They just need a backup behind him.
Yeah, I'm probably in the camp of Wemby's the 5. I think we have enough proof with that. I think, you need to have a good backup. It's not like, unless you're getting a guy like Isaiah
What about
Hartenstein,
a big 4? What about a huge 4?
I'm okay with that if you can find a 4 that can do that and stretch the floor, right? Or at least just can hold up and be the power defensively, right? Bring power forward, bring the power back to the name a little bit. But I think the ultimate thing is you need to be cognizant of the fact of your team went on a run last year with Wemby at the 5. He's a 5. We can stop playing this game of, is he a 5? Is he a 4? He's a center. Like, at the end of the day, I think that's the most important thing they need to hold sight of. And then now is just finding the guys that work with you and playing at the 4. If it's a big guy as a 4, if it's a guy like Isaiah Hartenstein at the 4, yeah, I'm in. Let's go. There are very few of those guys, though, that are out there that can kind of be the Hartenstein of the team. So I think you're kind of in an interesting situation there for them. But for me, it's Wemby's the 5.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But ultimately, it would be nice to have a backup big who can occasionally play next to him, but not all the time. For the most part, that player will not be starting games but there might be situations where you go to two bigs for certain playoff matchups, whatever it might be, certain regular season matchups where you want to just be big. And maybe sometimes you might not want Victor to have to defend Nikola Jokic. Maybe you want Wemby roaming off of Aaron Gordon in a series and being a guy doubling, helping at the rim. That maybe there's situations like that. Who knows?
I will make one exception. If they can get Brook Lopez, then I will say, okay, Wemby can play the 4, Brook Lopez can play the 5.
Oh, but and even then, though, I mean, we saw Wemby bother Jokic in ways with his length that nobody else can.
But
so, maybe you don't want Lopez.
My thought was more just, and it was literally Jokic specific, was, okay, if Lopez could slow Jokic down and Wemby could just rotate over.
Oh, my God.
Like, now you have 7 feet and 7 feet coming. It's like, what are you doing?
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, to me, I want that club in my bag if I'm the Spurs. They don't have it right now. I want it in my bag at some point.
It's hard because it's like, okay, then is it a Nick Claxton we're talking about? Like, is that?
And
but is that a guy?
Shoot, you know,
he can't shoot, and then on top of that too, that's the guy that you're probably going to have to spend a good amount of money to keep over time.
Yes.
And that's a bench. That's a guy that's sitting on your bench more than playing.
And it's too good for what we're talking about, right?
Right. So it's like, who's the guy that's kind of in that?
Day'Ron Sharpe. How about Day'Ron Sharpe? Go get Cam Johnson and Day'Ron Sharpe. Day'Ron Sharpe can be your backup. And occasionally he can be, a bit of a bruiser, a rebounder next to Wemby.
I'm gonna get in trouble probably for this, but I kind of like Bassey. Like, I think you're getting good.
Yeah,
you're getting good. You're getting what you need from Bassey. If they're gonna give me Day'Ron Sharpe in my Cam Johnson hypothetical trade, sure, I'll take him. But like, if it's a situation where I got to give up even more assets to add Day'Ron Sharpe to the trade, I'm probably not going to do it because, again, I'm getting what I need from Bassey in large part.
We'll take a quick break, and when we're back, talk about the other teams involved in that trade and a bunch of other stuff happening around the NBA as well. Okay, Mo, the Bulls. I made a post on X about this saying that they just got ripped here. I think it's a horrible return for the Bulls. You give up Zach LaVine, who's posting borderline all-star numbers. He's been very, very good for 4 of the last 5 years, besides last season when he's been hurt. And all you get back is your own 2025 first-round draft pick, plus Kevin Huerter, Trey Jones, a career backup, Zach Collins, who looks ready to sign in China. I just cannot believe the Bulls didn't get more value back for Zach LaVine, despite how expensive his contract is. I get that. I get it. I just would rather keep Zach LaVine at that price than I would trade him for this. Sometimes it's better to not make a deal than it is to make a deal. I'm blown away that the Bulls didn't get more here for him or just didn't decide to keep him.
I understand them could have gotten more in that instance. This is also the organization that could have gotten 2 first-round picks for Alex Caruso, supposedly. Last deadline didn't, and now it's Josh Giddey. So there's a lot of stuff with the Bulls where we can question it. The one thing I like to remind people, though, like, I'm not that angry about the Bulls. Maybe it's because I'm just so used to them making these poor decisions.
That is why.
Yeah, but in the summer, well, it's what I expect, right? If they make a good decision, then I'm like, wait, what's going on? Like, now I'm a little bit concerned. It's good to remember, though, that in the summer, they couldn't trade Zach LaVine without attaching a pick, right? So, like, there's an important aspect in that, like, there was a thought, like, hey, you're going to have to send a first-round pick to get somebody to take LaVine's contract. Now, listen, he's been balling, really, this whole season. Been super efficient, been great. Like, there's, borderline all-star, everything, along those lines. So I understand that, okay, maybe the price has changed a bit. But I can see it where they're just not seeing the offers coming in for him that are interesting, that make sense for them. There's, Milwaukee, I believe, was kicking the tires maybe a little bit, but I don't know what they're offering in a sense that makes it so much for him. The one thing I'd say for them, and it's not a very hard defense because we talked about it already, but I think the idea of them just saying, hey, we just want to make sure if our pick happens to fall out of the top 10, we still have it. Right, because it was top 10 protected, if I remember correctly, that they're getting back, and so I think that's an important for them. I also think this just means there's more trades coming from them. right? Like they're about to tank. Like and I'm sorry, Bulls fans, you guys should have done this a long time ago, but this is going to be a situation where I think we're going to see them really try to get to the bottom here and be pretty bad. But at the same time, there's a risk for them where they're like, damn, we might fall out of the top 10 and we're not going to have a pick.
I mean, look, I misspoke earlier when I said the amount of picks the Spurs gave up as well, though. The Bulls gave up a second in that deal. They gave up their second round pick in 2025. Like that's part of it where I'm like, wait a minute. You gave
that
up
part's stupid.
Top 40 pick, an early second round pick in a deal when you were already going to likely get your pick anyway.
Yeah,
you're probably going to be in the top 10.
Listen, I'm not surprised. I mean, clearly their asset management is awful. Like just their understanding of it, They
get nothing for DeRozan. They don't get picks for Caruso.
I mean, this is clearly just a front office that's just.
They give Patrick Williams $100 million.
That was wild. No, it's a poorly run organization. Like we're being to be clear. So it doesn't surprise me when we put them in this situation. I can just see it from their perspective a little bit. Doesn't mean I agree with it. Doesn't mean I would have done it. I would have tried to get another pick in this deal, whether from Sacramento, whether from the Spurs. I would have tried to. I'd have been like, if you guys really need me to make this trade happen, then I need another pick. Like I would have, one of you guys have to figure that, and I would have held on to my second. But I don't know what to tell you, Kevin.
Well,
Terribles.
The Kings benefit here. I like the deal for the Kings because I'm so high on Zach LaVine. I wish the Kings had been able to get more draft capital back in return, but ultimately, for all the reasons why the Malik Monk, Domantas Sabonis duo just meshes with Monk's style of play and athleticism and shooting ability, just that flair he has, I think it can work in the same way with Zach LaVine. So you have LaVine and Monk with Sabonis. I very much am excited to watch the Kings once they get these guys all together. And if you're a Kings fan, the team's played very well without Fox this year. There's a chance the team comes back better because of that aspect that LaVine brings to the team that Monk also brings. So I'm very excited for Kings fans, considering they get LaVine here.
I'm just curious what the long-term plan is in Sacramento. Like, that's really kind of my confusion a little bit. Like, I think they did a good job in this trade. I think they got the situation they're in where it's, hey, he wants to go to San Antonio. We have to make sure we get as much as we can. I think they got the most they possibly could get for De'Aaron Fox. I'm not killing them for this trade. I just want to know what's next, because it's a lot of, like, when you look at all the pieces, it's like a lot of ingredients. I have no idea what the hell I'm going to make out of this. Right? Like, there's a lot of stuff there, and Monk's been awesome. And, if he didn't get hurt last year, he's a sixth man, and we're talking about him at a, different tier, I think, as well. I think, Sabonis has always been really good. You have DeRozan, who's been great. I mean, really kind of showed it last night in their game. And obviously LaVine, and it's just pairing LaVine with DeRozan again. All right, here we go. And Sabonis in the Vooch role. I mean, it's like we saw what the Bulls were when they had, when they had those guys, and now it's like, are we just signing up to be the Bulls, like in the West, in a tougher conference? Like, I'm a little bit worried about that aspect for the Kings. And now we have all these picks. Like, what's our next move?
I have not heard anything about them trying to trade DeRozan, but I'd be thinking about it. I would be, for exactly the reasons you're talking about. Like, we know what LaVine DeRozan can do together. Let's see if we get something better for DeRozan that fits with LaVine and Monk and Sabonis, because this team, they're 24th in three-point percentage this season. They're not shooting as many threes as they had in past years, at 20th in attempts per game. The Kings need shooting. LaVine brings that. If they could flip DeRozan to something that could also be additive there, to me, that would make a lot more sense with this roster taking a certain type of complexion that you would expect. DeRozan just doesn't feel like he will be part of that moving forward.
The DeRozan move always felt funny to me. Like in the offseason when it happened, I was just like, okay. Like, it wasn't one like, oh, it's just the different phases of Mo, of like my reactions and things, where it's like, oh, what the hell? It was more just like, all right. Like, okay, I didn't see it being a situation where, like, that didn't really move the needle, where I felt like I had to go running to a microphone and give my opinions. It just felt okay. So like, I don't know really what you do. And I love DeRozan. Listen, he's an SC guy. Fight on. Like, I'm always going to be on Team DeRozan, but like, I just didn't feel like it made a lot of sense for them. And now I'm just curious to see how this will play out for the Kings, not just this season, but the next couple seasons.
Just a quick note, the one name we didn't mention that the Kings got back, I think there's a chance. The best non-LaVine asset the Kings got in this trade is CD Sissoko, who has barely played for the Spurs. He's been with the Austin Spurs, their G League team, but Sissoko, I have loved him for a long time, like I do most French players. Versatile defender. He's got size and length. He can pass the ball. The shot has not developed in the ways that you would hope for. But I'm a believer in Sissoko, and I just want to note him for Kings fans.
I want you next time to have a little like beret, little handkerchief tie. Whenever you're going to talk about the French players and your love of the French players, I want you to have a whole little outfit set to go.
Just there's a French flag drops from the ceiling behind me.
In the background, it plays the anthem, the whole deal.
All right, Mo, let's talk about some stuff that hasn't happened yet. Kevin Durant, a lot of noise around KD this week. I got some intel over the weekend. I had responded to an Anthony Slater post on X, and I said that, Jimmy Butler's not saving the Warriors. There's no one available that can save the Warriors. And then the next morning I heard, well, the Warriors are really calling the Suns a lot about Kevin Durant. I quoted my post with a photo of KD holding his Warriors jersey at his introductory press conference in 2016. And I said, well, there is one player that could save the Warriors. Now, that's been reported on since. I was just teasing it. It has been widely reported on that the Warriors want to go get KD. I'm not so sure that this is actually going to be something that happens here, because if the Suns are indeed open to trading Kevin Durant, are we sure the Warriors are the team that could make the best offer here? Why would Orlando not go out there and offer some picks? What is stopping some of these other teams? The Sixers trying to go out and get Kevin Durant. They have 4 future first round picks they could trade. I just think there's a hell of a lot of other teams that could go make a better offer for Kevin Durant than the Warriors could.
There's a lot to unpack there. I don't think the Warriors can make the best package, an offer for Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant's going to have a say of where he goes. He's up for extension this offseason. So there's always that kind of hammer that team, that guys can kind of use where it's like, I'm not re-signing there. And, that's kind of what worried the Mavs about the Luka deal, although that's asinine with the Supermax. There was no way he's turning that down, but that's a whole different story. The fact of the matter is, like, there's going to be a little bit of a say there. So you're right in whether KD wants to go there or not. So I don't know if when the Suns say, okay, we're going to look at offers for Kevin Durant, I don't know if they're going to be able to get the max, for him. And it's hard. Look, he's an older player. He's got to go to a team like, when you're trading, or like you're a young team like Orlando, and you're going to trade a lot to get a guy like Kevin Durant, you also know this is just about 2 years, right? Like and again, it's the pressure then becomes you have to win a championship in those 2 years. As long as you have to make this work. This has to be a championship level team, and there's a lot of things when you look at it with KD. Injuries come up. You're a little bit concerned. It's the past few years have been very injury riddled for him and things like that. Doesn't mean when he's on the court, he's still damn good. I'm just talking about last night's game against Portland. I mean, they lose the game.
Top 15 guy. He's still top 15.
He gets his shot off whenever he wants. Yeah, he gets going, finds his groove and his rhythm.
Just not the same defensively. He's not that guy who played the 5 for the Warriors in the finals and won 2 finals MVPs. He's not that level defender anymore.
Right. And I think that's going to be the thing that's really interesting there. I mean, yeah, if you're the Suns and you can't convince Bradley Beal to waive the no trade clause, and they've done everything they possibly could to make him uncomfortable.
I don't think he will. I don't think he's going to.
I don't think he will either. I don't think he's going anywhere.
I don't think so.
So now their only other option is either Durant or Booker, and if I'm a team, I'd pretend I'm calling about Durant, but I'm really going to just kick the tires and see where they're at on Booker. I don't think they'd move him, but that's really like, When they throw out like, we want all this, I said, no, if you're doing that, I want Booker. And I think that's more where you're trying to figure things out with what Phoenix is going to do. But KD moves the needle for a team, the right team. Your San Antonio example, like that's okay. That's one where everybody's going to sit up and go like, okay, well, San Antonio's going all in. Let's see what we got.
Why not Memphis? Somebody like that, like all the Jimmy Butler talk for them. Why not just pivot to Kevin Durant?
Any team that was interested in Jimmy Butler should be checking to see if they can get Kevin Durant instead. All of them. All of them.
There's a lot of teams. A lot.
Yes. Everybody's going to be checking in and seeing like, hey, what, it's going to be. It's a conversation. It's definitely the meetings that you have in the front office right now where you get like, this is the way it works, Kevin. Like some assistant GM or a director of player personnel gets a call of like, hey, would you be interested in Kevin Durant? And he walks into the general manager's office going like, hey, man, you're not going to believe this. They want to know what we would offer for KD. And next thing you know, it's all right. We're all in the conference room. Close the doors. Everybody locked in and bunkered. What do we think it's worth? What's the deal? It's a conversation. It's at least a 2-hour meeting of trying to figure out what you would do and how it would work and the impact of everything. So, KD's a guy that will move the needle. Any team that's close to a championship, Houston, Memphis, like you said. I mean, hell, like Indiana should look, and see if they can find a way.
How about the Knicks? I don't think they have enough draft capital, but what if it's like OG Anunoby? What if let's just say total theoretical. What if you offered OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges?
I mean, like, I think Phoenix does it more than the Knicks.
I agree. I agree because they have enough offense already. Yes.
Yeah, I think that like my thing with the Knicks, man, it's like everybody keeps trying to throw somebody at the Knicks. I'm like, no, they just need to get to the playoffs healthy and ready to roll. Maybe it's move Mitchell Robinson for a different backup big or whatnot, or something like that. Do. But like that's about it. Like that, and that team keep that core together, even if they don't get to the conference finals this year or the finals. Keep that core together because that's a core that can grow together and can be damn good over time. Like there are teams I'm just like, don't go big for no reason. I don't feel like you have to. Just because there's a new shiny toy out on the market doesn't mean you need to go run and get it.
When it comes to, some of these kind of, with KD, we're talking about like, well, everybody's focused on Golden State. Who are these other teams that could go after him? When it comes to names in the trade market, I feel like we're hearing so much about Cam Johnson, who you mentioned, KD, Jimmy Butler. There's all these names like Day'Ron Sharpe is mentioned all the time from Brooklyn. We talked about him earlier. The one name you never hear is Larry Nance Jr. from the Atlanta Hawks. Larry Nance Jr., to me, if I'm a team like the Nuggets, if I'm a team like the Clippers, and I'm seeing the Spurs improve their roster, the Mavs getting Anthony Davis, they take a different shape. I'm wanting a better backup big behind my starter. I want a better backup behind Jokic in Denver. I want a better backup behind Zubats and with the Clippers. To me, Larry Nance is that type of guy who can play big. He can play small. He brings versatility to your team. I'm surprised there's not more noise around Larry Nance for a team like Denver, a team like the Clippers. I'd be going for him.
The thing about it with Larry Nance is the idea of Larry Nance is always so much better than the actual reality of Larry Nance.
Like, he's always hurt. The injuries,
it's always like we feel like he's going to be this guy. And it's just, it never pans out. It drives me nuts sometimes with him. And I think that's the situation there where it's teams are sort of just wary of the idea of like, hey, we're going to get Nance. He's going to be a piece for us. He's going to be huge for us. Backup position for us. He's going to solve those situations. And then it just never works out for, injury reason, just doesn't fit with the team or whatnot. It just doesn't work out. And I feel like that's one of those things that you're kind of worried about. But yeah, I mean, it's like, that's why he's been on like 5 teams already.
Here's the thing with Larry Nance. This year, there's one big difference between him and past years. He's shooting the hell out of the ball. 45% on 3-point attempts per game. Last year, he shot well just on a way smaller volume with the Pelicans. There was like a shift in his style offensively. This year, the shots are falling at a high volume. To me, when you talk about fit with him, that was always the thing where it's like, he's a a little undersized defensively, doesn't offer the spacing we need offensively. He's like a modern tweener, but I'm a believer in what the shot looks like this year and last year. And so that does change the fit aspect with what he can be for your team.
Who do you like better, Obi Toppin or Larry Nance?
Larry Nance.
Because that's really the question, right? Like, I think Obi Toppin is kind of that Larry Nance. It's Larry Nance Jr., and I was about to call him Larry Nance Jr. But Obi Toppin's kind of like the poor man's Larry Nance. And I think that's kind of the situation you're looking at, and you just got to see. I hear you. I just need to see it, man. Like, I just can't, in the sense of like a winning championship level team. Because again, the idea of it is always great. Doesn't seem to always pan out, at least in my view.
We also got a trade on Tuesday, Mo. The Sixers and the Mavericks made a deal. The Sixers are sending Caleb Martin to the Mavericks for Quentin Grimes and their own 2025 second round pick, which right now, top 10 pick in the second round, considering how bad they've been. Interesting deal for Dallas. They get AD. They get Max Christie. My understanding is that Quentin Grimes, his agent, wanted him to be moved because Max Christie will be taking a ton of minutes. Quentin Grimes takes a back seat. He's got an upcoming deal. Philly could theoretically provide more minutes, more opportunity. But for Dallas, Caleb Martin, just a more proven player. This feels like a deal that I understand them making to further bolster that team with the way Nico Harrison wants to build it. Say what you want about, how twisted the viewpoint might be. This does fit what Nico Harrison's vision is about having some defense and versatility on that roster.
Yeah, this is a good trade for Dallas after, the trade that they made. I think this is one of those that's kind of smart. Again, Quentin Grimes, fine, but I think, right, Caleb Martin being a proven player is key there. We saw what he's done in Miami. Defensively, can knock down the three ball. I mean, you're in Boston. Boston fans all know the Martin killing three balls. And I think there's all of those, the fit within the Mavs is a nice one. And I think that's going to be perfect. He's going to slide right in. They have a nice little defensive roster that they're putting together. And I think it's pretty interesting to see what they do in Dallas, this season. I think they're trying to say, and I'll give Harrison credit on this. When you traded for AD, it was, we have to win a championship in the next 3 years. And hey, we're going to build a defensive roster. We're going to build a defensive team to do that. That's what he's doing. And he's true to his word, at least, right? It's being smart in that sense. It's a smart move for them. Doesn't seem like they were going to have a chance to really, Grimes was going to go in restricted free agency. Don't think they were really going to try to sign him, so let's get something for him. I think it was a smart move on their end.
And for Philly, I wonder if this could be some type of indication of them being willing to sell on this season. There's been, the Yabusele noise as well. Teams calling about him with how stellar he's been back in the NBA this year. I do wonder if maybe they have more of a willingness to just, kick the can till next year and hope things get better. Hope for lottery luck this year with their first.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case for Philly. I think that's the most, you kind of see it. That's what this trade signals on their end. Of like, hey, our fringe guys might be available. I mean, somebody might call about Kelly Oubre. Somebody's going to be checking. Yabusele's a guy I would keep an eye on as another big that might end up getting moved, before the deadline. Like, that's in a similar type trade. Might not be a first round pick they get, but maybe a second or 2 seconds. Like, there's going to be something there to keep an eye on for Philly. But that's definitely the signal we just got from the Sixers.
The only thing I'll say, playing devil's advocate here, Quentin Grimes is not bad. He's not a bad player. He's 40% from three on the year. We've seen him, like, what was it, 2 years ago with Detroit, or the end of his tenure with the Knicks, where he was like just 25 points per game to close the season. Yeah, it was his last year with the Knicks, I believe.
It was the Knicks.
Yes. And it's like we've seen him have these stretches.
He can play. This isn't a shot about him being like
24 years old. He's young.
This is a good move from the Sixers. Also, restricted free agent. Like I said, they're going to be able to retain him, and keep an eye on the market and stuff. So this is their way of taking a flyer on him, see what we have, see how he fits with the team. A team that's going to need defense on the perimeter. I think Grimes provides that toughness a little bit more. I think this helps them in that regard. Like, I think this is an important move for them. It's just along the lines of, it's not a move that's going to change their fortunes this season.
Well, as we wrap up this recording, we're about 48 hours from the deadline. 48 hours from the deadline. I talked with Pete from Laker Film Room earlier in the show about his take on the Lakers getting Luka. I'll be very interested to see if the Lakers make another move. We did see the Pelinka press conference this morning as we record as well. He, had all his fantastical things. He said the way Pelinka says things. I'm excited to see what happens, man. I think we're going to have some more moves. Dallas already made another move. I bet the Lakers will make another move. It's just a matter of what. I'm excited, Mo. I'm fired up.
There you go, Kevin.
That's the best trade deadline ever, Mo.
48 hours.
The best deadline ever.
Well, it's going to be the best trade deadline ever when a trade gets announced and everybody assumes the guy was hacked and it wasn't real. Like that, you can never top that in a trade deadline. Like you will never. That's the pinnacle. That's the Mount Everest peak right there. Of he announces the trade and everybody's like, "Nah, that's not real." It's everybody's reaction was the same in that regard until we got confirmation. I'm with you. The Lakers are going to make a move. They desperately need a big man. I think they need to be aggressive in terms of what they do, in terms of adding another big man to it. But one thing, Kevin, and I just want to say this because this is going to bother me a little bit because I've been the most critical of Robert Pelinka for quite a while. And everybody's going to give him a ton of credit for him. I'm not giving him a lot of credit for this Luka deal. This was gifted to him. I don't care what anybody says. This was gifted to him. And Nico Harrison was only making one phone call. It was only to his buddy Rob. This was a gift for him. Now I will give him credit when he builds the roster around Luka and we see that it makes sense. Because the past few years, he's not done a great job with it. He can pretend like, hey, this is why we didn't make all the moves or whatever. He had no clue this was coming, and I'm 100% convinced when he got the conversation going with Harrison, and he was like, well, what about Luka? He was probably thinking the guy was drunk or high. Like, there's no way this is that. So, like, I know we're going to give him a lot of credit with everything. I'm not ready to give him this. He was gifted this by the Mavs. This is an unbelievable situation for the Lakers, but it's the way it always works for the Lakers. The Pau Gasol trade. It was 17 years to the day that trade happened. It's insane.
It's Lakers exceptionalism. That's what it is.
That's what I got to stop crapping on. That's what I got to stop crapping on. Lakers exceptionalism is something the notion is I've crapped on it a ton over the years. I got to stop because it just works. It's just, if you're a Laker fan, yeah, just constantly believe you're going to get everybody because somebody's going to call and give you a top 3 player who's 25 years old for 1 draft pick. And Anthony Davis, who I'm not trying to crap on, but it ain't comparable, man. Like, that's just insane. 1 draft pick, Kevin. That's all it took. Not even the good draft pick. You get the 2031 draft pick, not the 2029. Killing me. He might have done some great Svengali talking to Harrison to keep him from making other phone calls. He might have done a great job in whittling the deal down and pretend like great acting, much like Rob Lowe, his doppelganger.
You seem salty, Mo.
Because I just honestly, this is a great deal. But it's a deal like everybody. It's not like he's a genius.
Sure.
We're going to give him this credit and all of this, where Rob Pelinka has done all these amazing. This was gift wrapped for him. This was a gift from the Mavs. Happy Valentine's Day, Rob Pelinka and the Los Angeles Lakers organization. Here's your franchise star for the next 10 years. Like, I don't want to walk around and act like Pelinka's this unbelievable genius. He's not done a lot with this roster over the years, and I feel like, now I'm excited because I want to see what he builds around Luka, because he's got to put a roster together that can win a championship.
I mean, hey, sometimes some great deals fall into your lap. Earlier this year in my fantasy basketball league, I traded Tyus Jones and Derek Lively for Cade Cunningham. Sometimes you just win deals.
Out. You need to out the person who gave you that offer.
Nope, I'm not going to do that. I gave the offer. I'm the one who proposed the deal. But sometimes
wow.
Sometimes you just win them. Sometimes you win a deal.
Are you winning your fantasy league?
I didn't expect to win it the way I did.
Are you winning your fantasy
league?
Third
place. I'm in 3rd place right now.
Well, go give up Yabusele for Giannis. You'll be fine. That'll work for you. That's what your fantasy league seems to be doing. What? Who would take that?
The 9th place team.
Oh. Was cash exchanged at least? Like something? Like, did you buy him a
cash.
lobster roll or?
They needed a point guard and they needed
Jones
a big.
was the guy
they needed a big. They had no centers, and I was the lifeboat that brought out Derek Lively.
You know, the funny thing is,
who could have seen Cade turning into an All NBA guy? It happened, you know.
I'm going to be thinking about that maybe even more than the Luka Doncic trade today. Like, that's like, wow. Okay.
Mo, thank you for joining me today, man.
Thank you for having me, Kevin.